Graduating the Educational Policy. We are privileged to have Dr. Vinay Sahasrabuddhe, a Member of Parliament as well as a former Rajya Sabha representative for Maharashtra. Moderating this session is Dr. Vinayachandra Banavathy, the Chief Consultant at Chanakya University. Dr. Banavathy has played a key role with his contributions to the National Educational Policy.
Sabhaye Namaha, Sabhasadbhyo Namaha. It's a wonderful opportunity to invite you, sir, on this platform where we'll be discussing on graduating national education policy. Education policy ಕುರಿತಂತಹ ಈ ಸಂವಾದಕ್ಕೆ ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಕೂಡ ಆತ್ಮೀಯ ಸ್ವಾಗತ. It's also a privilege to briefly introduce Shri Vinay Sahasrabuddhe ji, again a man who doesn't need any introduction on this platform. He's a policy expert, public intellectual, and a political scholar, has been close at the heart of political movement yet not sucked into it. Formerly, he has been the member of Rajya Sabha from Maharashtra. He was also the president of ICCR, Indian Council for Cultural Relations, from 2017 to 2023, and he currently is the vice chairman of Rambhav Malagi Prabodhini, a center dedicated to train public leadership for doing its service, giving its service for a long time in Maharashtra. Welcome, sir. Given the educational scenario, starting from the Macaulay's minutes of 1835, which clearly read as something we need to prepare, we need to do our best to prepare a class who will be the interpreters between us and the millions whom we govern. We have come a long way in 2020 with the new education policy, which very clearly articulates that we need to have an education system which is second to none and which gives quality education, the highest quality education, which is accessible and affordable to everyone. So this is a long journey that we see in the educational landscape of India. Initially, I would like to hear your remarks on this journey of 200 years old, and then we can take up various minute aspects related to this, sir.
First of all, I must thank the MLR Lit Fest, the Mangaluru Lit Fest organizers for having me here. I have been hearing about this Lit Fest, which is perhaps very prominent in Karnataka, and to be invited over here, I believe is a great privilege. So thank you for that. And thanks for picking up a subject like education, because although the subject is extremely critical, important for our future, hardly we discuss it with due seriousness and kind of profoundness which the subject merits, in fact. To answer your question, I must tell you that right since 1947, in fact, it was required that apart from several other reforms, the government of the day in those period should have paid adequate attention in bringing an education policy which has the fragrance of the soil of this land. Unfortunately, that was not paid any attention, in spite of several commissions, starting from Kothari Commission, Ramamurthy Commission, in between Radhakrishnan Commission, and so on and so forth. The task was not completed. Basically because there was some kind of an inertia, and it was perhaps in all departments of public administration. And we realized many people of the little senior generation over here would recall that immediately after complete decade post-independence, people started saying that while the Angrez has left, Angreziyat, it's still here. While the white English people have gone, the black English people are already there. I mean, they are very much there. We have not been able to remove them. That was the complaint. So people had started realizing that precious little has changed post-independence. And this realization, in fact, should have taken us to a different level when we think about the content of education and the conduct of education. Both are critical. Now, if we look at the National Education Policy 2020, in this setting, I believe there is a huge value addition in the approach, in the methodology, and also the way education policy is being unfolded. See, to tell you about in nutshell, the approach, and there are mentions in the documents about new education policy where they have in a very crystallized manner mentioned what are the objectives of it. And there are 2-3 very important objectives. One of the objectives clearly mentions that teacher-taught relationship is something very, very critical, and I consider it as the centerpiece of Indian philosophy of education. Guru Shishya Parampara is what we call. And therefore that has been given due prominence. At the same time, teacher education, because if you give importance to teacher-taught relationship, naturally your teachers will have to be well equipped today, considering the changing expectations of the new aspirational India. And therefore that is one of the critical changes that have happened. At the same time, methodology of evolving this education policy, practically from every district, suggestions were sought, and they came also in good number. A panel worked for more than 3 years and gave a very brilliantly drafted and crafted education policy. And insofar as unfoldment is concerned, of course, one cannot be unmindful of the fact that education is a subject of concurrent list. And therefore much more depends upon the states. How do they look at it? Simply center on its own cannot ensure that the new education policy, the National Education Policy 2020, is translated into reality in letter and spirit.
Sure, sir. I'll come off a couple of issues that you mentioned. But before that, somewhere down the line, we had been convinced or we had been told that prior to British, there was no education. But our own texts, our own lineages have some other story to tell. Right from the Smritis, which says, Etad Desha Prasutasya Sakashad Agrajanmanha, that people from different walks of life used to come here to learn about their tradition and heritage, to the empirical evidences provided by Dharampal, that in every village, whether small or big, in all the 3 presidencies where the British started their work, there was one school, a dedicated school which had access, or towards which all the kids had access. So this was the educational heritage. And somehow we also seem to lost it. But while it was there, it was really a timeless tradition that was there, probably running thousands of years. What were those important elements of that tradition would you identify, which we need to bring it back to our system today?
Well, as I said, the first and the most important was the teacher-taught relationship. I mean, if Rama and Krishna decided to go to the Guru Gruha, it was not because their apartments were just 1-bedroom kitchen apartments and they were very small, and for tuitions there was no place. That was not the case, because our philosophy told us that learning and teaching by examples, by illustrations was given extreme importance. If you go through the description about how Takshashila and Nalanda universities were conducted, I mean how education was conducted over there, you will find references that one teacher, in a way surrounded by 10, 15, 20 shishyas, a guru in between, and then they used to have day-long discussions, debates, so on and so forth. And therefore that was the key to Indian education, I would say. Secondly, in our ancient scriptures, as has there been ample evidence about, we were basically a nation with a knowledge society. I mean, Gyanarthi Samaj, that was the right description of Indian society. But then our Jnana Parampara, our knowledge traditions were majorly oral traditions, which is why we find references like Shruti, Smruti, but Shruti comes first and then Smruti. Whatever the things in writing, perhaps one can say they came after the Puranokta thing, also figured in our description of our knowledge traditions. So, oral tradition, teacher-taught relationship, learning by illustration, examples, These were the key features of Indian education. At the same time, I believe we also gave importance to education within the four walls of our homes, family. Today, people are talking about homeschooling, but that was very much here. You know what our scripture said insofar as the relationship with a grown-up child with his parents, how should it be? Our scriptures say, prapte tu shodasha varshe, putra mitravat acharet. So that was our youth policy, I would say, traditionally, which we have kind of worked through. And therefore, there was a particular, well-articulated, crystallized thinking about how education should be in a knowledge society that India wants.
Thank you, sir. Coming back to the earlier question about the policy formulation itself to NEP 2020, one thing that surprised many of us who have been closely observing the policy making is that of all the other educational policies or changes that were being brought in, this faced least resistance across ideological spectrums. So what was something special about this education policy which had such a greater and wider receptivity and acceptability? Anything that you would say will stand out?
Very important. Basically, the democratization of the process. And I'm not exaggerating when I'm saying that from several gram panchayats also, suggestions were sought, focus group discussions were held. Many people went and approached the committee that was formulating the national education policy. I was a member of parliament, and the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Education, of which I was the chairman, we also discussed it threadbare and how it should be implemented. The element of new technologies was also discussed. I mean, 5 years before it was not so very prominent, but even then it was discussed over there. And more importantly, I believe the education policy has taken care of, which is why there is least political opposition to the content of the new education policy. I believe it takes care of the new emerging India and its growing aspirations. And this is very required. In lighter vein, I'll cite an example, how the younger generation is thinking. And we must be conscious about this fact. In 2014, as a party functionary, I was in the campaign. And in one of the campaign meetings with the youngsters, a 20-something boy, after listening my presentation, approached me and he very bluntly asked me questions. Sir, do you know what our generation is looking for?
Okay.
I was a little startled, taken aback. But I said, perhaps, my friend, let me know. I know what your generation wants because my son is also almost of your age. But tell me, enlighten me, what your generation wants. And very bluntly, he told me, sir, in Hindi, he said, simple hai, sir, hamare fundas bahut clear hai. We want 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This was 2014. Huh?
Okay.
I said, what is this? I didn't realize. What is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1? He said, simple hai, sir. We want 5-figure salary, 4-wheeler, 3-bedroom hall kitchen, 2 kids and 1 wife. Now, one would say that how blunt the child is and how materialistic is his thinking. But I would desist from commenting in this way. I would say how focused he is, whether right or wrong, he knows where he has to go. And that is the changed India about which we will have to be deeply conscious. And I consider that the new education policy, take the example of emphasis on mother tongue, education in mother tongue.
The foundation level.
Yeah. Basically, our matru, our mothers, our matru bhumi and our matru bhasha, everything we require to be respecting. And for example, if a French person takes engineering and medicine education in French language, or an Italian takes it in Italian language, why should a Kannadiga not be taking it? It should not be made available to him in Kannada language, or in Marathi, or in Gujarati. And now it is happening. So there was perfect logic behind whatever was presented through the national education policy, which is why I believe those who wanted to even to politically find some fault in it and oppose it, unfortunately could not do so. I mean, unfortunately for them.
There was, of course, some controversy related to the language policy, but again, it was immediately corrected and it was well received. But coming back to this language issue, while the national education policy very clearly says about elementary education to be provided in the mother tongue and also recommends higher education also to be provided in the mother tongue, still at the ground level, I think it's taking time to pick up or to receive, have that receptivity. What are those challenges and how do we, what can be done beyond policy also to bring in that kind
Number of
change?
things. I'm happy you raised this issue because whether people here in Karnataka speaking Kannada or maybe Telugu or Marathi, Gujarati, I really feel very disturbed when I see that people consider speaking in your own mother tongue something below the status. I'll cite one example. In Mumbai, many of you must have visited Mumbai and how jam-packed are Mumbai local trains. But in a local train, if you are lucky enough to get a seat to sit, and then somebody in front of you is reading a Marathi newspaper, I'm just giving an example, and I am peeping through right in front of him and wanting to have that newspaper once he has finished it. Now he is reading a Marathi newspaper, so he is a Marathi person. I am a Marathi person. Because I want to read a Marathi newspaper, naturally I am a Marathi person. So once he finishes reading the paper and folds it and keeps it away, I ask him in Hindi, "Jara padhne ko denge?" I mean, what kind of inferiority complex is this? Many times it so happens that in our country, when people indulge in some kind of a gali galoj, they use all galis which are in Hindi, not in their mother tongue. I mean, a weird mentality. So, unfortunately, we have not respected our mother tongues, and therefore we have to speak, we have to use our mother tongue. See, languages are the vehicles of culture.
True.
I mean, I always cite one example that if you want to understand what Shakespeare has written, say for example in Hamlet, everybody knows the plot of the very well-known theatre act, which is Hamlet, the drama. Now in Hamlet, there comes a sentence to describe the queen, which is so very loudly protesting the murder of the prince. And therefore, a kind of a coinage came into existence in English, which says the lady protests too much. Now, to understand the meaning behind lady protests too much, you have to understand Shakespeare, you have to understand Hamlet. Tomorrow, if Times of India uses this phrase and says that the behavior of XYZ leader is akin to the lady protests too much, I would start wondering, who is this lady? There are so many ladies in Indian politics. So I would not realize that to which lady is the Times of India editor referring to. So there is, I mean, this is the importance of our languages. And therefore, if we want our culture to, I mean, the stream of our culture, the continued stream of our culture, indigenous culture, to be taken forward and to be handed over to the next generation, with some value addition at our end, we have to pick up the habit of speaking in our mother tongues.
True. So taking from languages and going more towards culture or the larger element there, I think one of the highlights of this education policy is also the emphasis it lays on bringing in rootedness in Indian culture and tradition, also to bring back that pride. While it has been articulated very well throughout the NEP document, many still feel that this was too little and too late. The government took nearly 10 years or 8 years to come with these ideas, what they could have done earlier itself. What are your thoughts on that, sir?
See, after all, when you bring a new policy, there is a process that is required, and naturally people sitting in the committee are also very learned people. They have their own views. To arrive at some consensus also requires some time to be given. So there need no, and then it was done in a very democratic manner, which is why there is no murmur about that. At the same time, when you say too little too late, I must tell you that this going back to the roots or making the younger generation, the students, give a sense of rootedness. It's something very important, but then for this feeling of rootedness, perhaps we have to have that top-down approach. And today I am happy that the leaders in the government are really rooted in the Indian culture, which is why our Prime Minister doesn't feel shy of giving a copy of Bhagavad Gita to the King of Japan whenever he visited. And not only that, I was President of the Indian Council for Cultural Relations. I'll give two important examples. We regularly started conducting 2015 again, International Ramayana Festival.
Okay.
And you know, there is a whole lot of countries which are having a continued influence of our epics, Ramayana and Mahabharata. I would in fact go one step further and say that let us, like SAARC and UNCTAD and ASEAN, have a group of countries like Rama and Mahabharata countries. Even if we decide that, I'm sure there are going to be 20, 25 countries who still believe in the traditions of Ramayana and Mahabharata. So once in 2018, I believe, when we invited the government of Brunei, along with all Southeast Asian countries for that matter, there was some discussion in our office that getting a delegation, a cultural troupe from Indonesia, Malaysia, Sri Lanka, Myanmar is easy because there are groups of Hindu people who are there and therefore we will get some good people over there. But how can we expect a Ramayana presentation from a country which has 100% population following Islam? But much to our happiness, they sent a troupe and they performed very well. They presented a Jatayu Vadha story of Ramayana. And after their performance, when we were having a cup of tea, one of our officials said that we were wondering whether you would come or not. The group leader very firmly, very resolutely told our official that, boss, you are making a mistake. We have changed our religion, not our culture. This is the feeling all over. Take the example of Iran. In 2018, the president of Iran visited India. And in his discussion with the Indian leaders, Prime Minister and others, he referred to the commonality of our traditions, especially in the context of the contribution of Maharshi Panini as a grammarian. Panini created the grammatical structure of Sanskrit as well as Persian. So the government of Iran wanted to celebrate Panini and his contribution as a grammarian with some kind of a joint activity. So ICCR organized an international seminar at Tehran in Iran about Panini. And several people came from across the world. As president, I was there. So while I was having a cup of tea before the inaugural session with the Vice Chancellor of the Tehran University, he very inquisitively, in a way, he was curious to know, and therefore he asked me, Mr. Sahasrabuddhe, in Tehran University, we teach Rigveda and Upanishad. Tell me, in which university in India Upanishad and Rigveda are being taught? I had no easy answers immediately to be given. So, unfortunately, we have forgotten all these things, and I am happy that the government, right since it took over in 2014, has been giving emphasis on Indian traditional languages, Indian culture, and everything that goes with our rich civilizational heritage.
So since you mentioned about ICCR and the work it's been doing, I think not many here would know about the extent to which it is dedicated to bring about awareness about Indian culture and tradition through multiple modes of activities, including establishment of chairs, centers. So we'd be happy to hear about the work that ICCR has been doing.
Well, Indian Council for Cultural Relations also works in education, and therefore I don't mind telling a little bit, although the main subject is different, but still. See, what has happened, and everybody of you would agree with me, that India, although very attractive because of the colorful culture over here, and then India is also an enigma to many people because of their ignorance, maybe. And therefore, people are curious to know about India, generally speaking. Also, save for a couple of countries in Africa and elsewhere, but generally, I haven't come across all over the globe, wherever I had some interaction, any group of people or any country where people over there do not love India and Indians. India enjoys a huge amount of goodwill across the world. But in a changed global scenario, goodwill, although important, is not enough.
True.
We have to translate this goodwill into a real and proper understanding about the idea of India. Without that, the soft power element cannot be accrued to India. Unfortunately, India is one of the most misunderstood countries because of many people like maybe George Soros and his friends, and there are many organizations in academia, in media, so on and so forth, who perhaps wantonly portray India in a particular color. Maybe some of them are doing it as a design, but there are many who are ignorant. And unfortunately, they are ignorant about their own ignorance, sadly. But I was aghast when some 20 years before in California, in South California University, and this has been commented by Sri Lankan social scientist Sushanta Gunatilake in one of his books. He refers that in South California University, somewhere at the beginning of this millennia, there was a seminar on, the subject matter was bride burning and son preference traditions in India. Can you imagine? This is how people are indulging in portraying India in black color. Not only that, I'll give you my own personal example. I was there in Kyoto in Japan, and those of you who would get a chance to visit Kyoto, beautiful city, there is an ethnography museum. And it's a big museum, so naturally I was taken to visit the South Asia Gallery. For namesake, it is South Asia Gallery, it is all India, everywhere. And everything that you associate with the idea of India is present over there. I was deeply impressed. But I saw a signage over there. It mentioned that India is the home of several ways of worship. And prominent among them are Hinduism and Brahmanism. Now, what kind of misperception is this being cultivated, I would say? But then, unless and until we, the people of India, also come forward and contest all such misperceptions, things are not going to be taken care of. Government, it is my experience, unfortunately is a very important player, but the strength of government is woefully short to take care of meeting the challenge of misperception. If India is to be perceived properly, globally, it is for all of us to take more pains and work over time.
True, agree, sir. Just one last question, then we can open it up for our audience. One of the other hallmarks of this education policy is also the way it has tried to bring in flexibility and multidisciplinarity. In fact, it counts it as one of the foundational principles of this policy that no silos should be allowed. Those who are pursuing science should be able to navigate with humanities and arts. So what is the importance of this, and especially also being part of ICCR, which promotes cultural relations? What role does art play in this whole promotion of civilizational values?
Well, I would say definitely, the openness that the national education policy has brought in, it's something very, very welcome. It is not something which is not happening right now, it is happening today as well, that if a BSc student in certain universities wants to also have Bharatanatyam as one of the electives, apart from core subjects of his major stream, that is allowed now. So a BSc with chemistry and Bharatanatyam, this is not something imaginary these days.
True.
So this openness is very welcome, and today you can select as many subjects beyond your core stream, and there is a bank of credit which has been
Academic bank of
established,
credits.
you know all that, and therefore multiple experiments are now allowed. But I will also have a word of caution, because centers of higher learning, especially our IITs and IIMs especially, we have started humanity courses over there, which is not a bad thing per se. I mean, a chemistry or microbiology or maybe nuclear sciences student can also take a course in languages or in maybe dramatics or music, fine. But to have a particular department and to be running a course in humanities, I would say requires to be given a second thought. Because I have seen many IITs where the art stream students who have ample time at their disposal, generally speaking, indulging in all kinds of political activities, which otherwise were a complete no-no in our IITs and IIMs. I am not against political activism, but the science students do not have that luxury. So if just one particular group of students is trying to kind of set the agenda for the public activism as such of the students and teachers as well, I think that may vitiate the atmosphere. And many directors of some IITs, when our committee had visited, the Parliamentary Standing Committee, also agreed and shared their concerns about opening humanity courses in a big way in all the IITs and IIMs. So this is a word of caution. I'm sure the government is conscious of the fact, and as an experiment it has been done. I'm sure the experiments will be assessed and reassessed as well.
Thank you, Vinayji. On this note, we'll open up for questions from the audience. If there are any questions, you can please raise your hands and then we can take them up.
Vinayji, it's a pleasure to see you here in Mangalore. I had a question about this Indian knowledge system. There's been a new effort that in the last 10 years this government has been making. So where do you see this Indian knowledge system effort moving forward? What do you think will happen? Because you mentioned about this universities, the old universities, Takshashila, Nalanda and all. So, I mean, in the case of research, I'm sure there were some systems by which the Indian knowledge systems by which PhD level of research would have been done in those universities in the olden days. But of course, we lost the Nalanda University to the huge fire, set by the invaders and all that. So, but there are other universities in the country, Kanchipuram University. There was a university in Kanchipuram in Tamil Nadu. So the knowledge systems for higher research do exist. But is there an effort to kind of find out and revive those research systems, knowledge systems, so that we can actually change the pattern in which the PhDs are done in India? Because we follow the Western PhD research system right now. That's my question.
So the Western dominance has to be done away with. Many people here who are interested in geography, I would suggest them that after going back, just do some Google about the Mercator cartography and John Peters' projection of global map. And you will find the description. And once I visited the United Nations, where I came across with a map. And the map published by United Nations says that the Mercator maps are done with a Eurocentric mentality. So the maps that we are generally using are Mercator maps. But there is a parallel system which is called as Peters projection. And those maps considered more scientific because they are based on equal axis and equal area. Now, such things are there. I mean, I'm giving a different example, but insofar as traditional Indian knowledge systems are concerned, for example, our Vedic mathematics, or what you may not call Vedic, whatever our traditional ancient mathematics, let us put it that way, is still very, very relevant today. Globally, people are interested. There is an Indian who is studying, who is teaching in a Canada university. He has evolved the idea of Indian psychology. Because in India, our worldview has always been holistic. integrated kind of an approach. We never divide the things. We are not fragmentationists in that way. And therefore, everything in every other sector, I believe, there is some very original Indian thought. Let's take the example of sustainability. Is it not a fact that every morning there are many in the older generation in our families today who start their day by offering a prayer to Mother Earth saying that Vishnu Patni Namastubhyam Padasparsham Kshamaswame. Now this gratitude towards Mother Nature is starkly different from those who are talking about conquest over nature. We never. We always talked of confluence with Mother Nature. Is it not Indic knowledge system? It is. It is our approach. They are talking about sustainability. Now see how beautifully Prime Minister Modi has come out with the idea of lifestyle for environment. Life as what he describes. Because everything boils down on that. No matter how international lengthy seminars you organize about sustainability and things like that, if that is not reflected in your day-to-day conduct, what kind of saving of Mother Earth are you talking about? So, doing away with the hypocrisy, visiting our past, trying to find a continuity and linkage between our traditional knowledge and the modern day challenges, I think there lies the test of our efforts to revive our traditional knowledges.
With your permission, if I can just add, post NEP 2020, the government not only came up with its position but also has dedicated resource towards it. It has set up a IKS division under the Ministry of Education, and through which every year they are supporting more than 50 to 60 centers to pursue research, another 50 centers to teacher training programs, and now they have started one more initiative to produce and develop MOOC courses which will all be put up on Swayam or Swayam Plus platforms, and each institute will be mandated to offer these courses for their students. So gradually the UGC's guideline is that in next 2 to 3 years, 5% of the content should come from IKS. So we hope it's taking in the right direction, and there is much more to look forward to in the coming days in this direction. Thank you. We had one question there. Yeah.
Sir, the question is, actually NEP is the thing which we wanted as a student, but unfortunately we didn't have that. Right now I am working as a psychologist. My question is, sir, there are few states like Tamil Nadu. They said no to NEP and also NEET exam. And they wanted to, pressurize or put on their political agenda into the education system, and children or the students are becoming a victim of their political agenda. In this case, what alternative steps can be taken, like at least Supreme Court or President of India who can help, or based on a student's life, can they impose NEP on such states like Tamil Nadu?
It's a good question and it's a genuine concern that you are sharing. But unfortunately, in a federal polity that we are, nothing could be imposed, and much less a policy. After all, we have a federal setup, and every state will have to be convinced, and gradually they will also get convinced when they will realize the importance of it. It may take a little longer because of their serving petty political causes and giving more importance to them. But eventually, I'm sure they will also fall in line. They cannot keep them away. At the same time, when they would compare their own students with, let's say, Kendriya Vidyalaya students, or their own university graduates with, let's say, central university graduates, wisdom will dawn to them. They will realize that they are making a mistake, because their approach is very myopic, very short-sighted, very narrow, and I'm sure it will take some time, but they will realize the importance of national education policy. I am very optimistic.
Good evening. Just to add to what Dr. Vinayji said, fortunately our education system is under the concurrent list. That means the central government also has some say, and especially through the regulatory bodies. Like UGC is bringing radical reforms in higher education, whether they accept a national education policy or not. Even with the SAP, even Karnataka discarded national education policy and they have come up with state education policy. But nevertheless, certain guidelines provided by UGC have to be followed. Funds are linked to it, compliances are linked to that, and many regulations have been linked to that. So in that way, I think we are in the safe hands.
Sir, this is, I think it's audible. Yeah. Hello. Yeah, I think. Sir, don't mistake me. I am just wondering, always we refer India, our nation as India. Shouldn't we at least between us refer it as Bharat?
No, very well taken, and we should be kind of bringing that reform, no doubt. अभी हो क्या रहा है कि for the sake of linkage, we are depending upon English. Gradually, I will be also able to speak Kannada, I am sure, and you will be also able to understand Marathi. So once we reach that stage, till such time, and there is historically some reservation about Hindi, which I respect and understand as well, which is why we embrace English. And once we do that, naturally, instead of Bharat, habitually we refer to our country as India. But your suggestion is very well taken. Thank you.
Good evening, sir. My name is Karthik. I have one question like, in 1860, Indian Penal Code, IPC, was introduced to punish Indians, but not to give justice to Indians. Likewise, in 1830, the Macaulay's Minute, what do we call? It was created to create working class, like not to create officials and officers that level. So if that is focused on creating working class after industrial revolution, what we call, so what is NAP is focused on? So I am concerned about like if every one of us will become officials or fully graduated, so who will take the initiative of like ground level works, what do we see in common life? Asking because in countries like Russia and Japan, their highly graduates are also like doing this cleaning works and like small clerk works. So what do we want to learn from them to initiate NEP better?
Very good question. I think the national education policy, of course, I don't have the papers, I cannot quote it, but I must tell you that national education policy gives equal importance to higher learning, at the same time skill development. Now a whole lot of skill universities have started, and it will not be too long, I mean not so much in the distant future, but in another couple of years you will find courses in all kinds of trades and skills that normally we acquire within the four walls of our families, and they will be recognized. So you will get a certificate. For example, if somebody is traditionally working as a carpenter, or in automobile industry, we have many automobile and car repair shops where even children work. Now, it may go against the rules of child labor and all those things, which is important. But at the same time, they get hands-on experience about how to handle the automobile engines. Now, their skills acquired within the four walls of their family, traditionally, because they have come from their forefathers, they will also be recognized without they going for any school. So this is the importance. In a way, what Mahatma Gandhi ji had talked about, Shrama Pratishtha, which has been very well recognized in the national education policy, and it will not be too far that we have these mechanisms already in place. In Maharashtra, for example, a skill university has already started. Here also there is a skill university. In many other states also skill universities are coming up, and with that we will adequately recognize the menial labor related work that many of our brothers and sisters in the society have to undertake. So in the days to come, there won't be that distinction, there won't be that discrimination on the basis of what kind of work you do. Of course, in an ideal situation.
I've done my engineering, okay, and after that I've been to Bengaluru for work. During that time, what I felt is cooking is something we do not know as men generally. So why is it not included in education system? Because that is a real important thing which we need. And add to that, one more issue, what I've observed is a lot of deaths happen due to accidents. And right now in Mangaluru, the traffic has gone really bad. People don't follow rules. Why it is not included in our education system? Because if you teach them when they are in probably 10th standard or PUC, so it will be really helpful. You can save many lives.
No, I mean, of course, your suggestions are very pertinent, but let me tell you, again, my examples are from Maharashtra because I belong to that state, but in Maharashtra, there is a quota in the state transport organization, Maharashtra State Transport, for tribals to occupy the position of drivers who can drive the buses. But unfortunately, they are never filled. Why? Because most of the tribal area students, for them it is very difficult to clear class 12 examination with mathematics and English as compulsory subjects. So now the government has removed that compulsion and has allowed driving to be taken as a elective for their 12th class examination. So he will be a 12th standard student with driving as one of the subjects. If that happens, things will definitely fall in proper line. And this can be replicated elsewhere also. Insofar as cooking is concerned, I believe, while your suggestion is well taken and there are already institutes of home science and things like that, nutrition is also an important part of it. But at the core of the whole thing, as I understand, it goes a little beyond education, but I may reflect on that as well. See, unless and until men decide to consider that the traditional jobs within the families done by the women are equally important, this mindset change may not happen. And therefore, even if we start courses in cooking, unless and until our mothers and sisters tell their male children that cooking is an important part and you will have to learn it, things may not perhaps improve. So, it is for all of, again, I am not putting the entire responsibility on women, it is the responsibility of the men as well, and men will have to kind of bring that reform in their mindset. The traditional chauvinistic mindset will have to undergo change, then only real Ardhanari Nateshwara, which is the model of gender justice in India, can be brought into reality.
Good evening, sir.
And also while referring to the NEP refers to the 64 kalas. As a part of it, the Paka Kala is also mentioned there, which needs to be encouraged among children.
Good evening, sir. My name is Vinay, and my question might sound little childish, but it's related to children and childhood. So my question is basically on the concept of pre-KG, nursery, and LKG and those stuff. My question is, children have to enjoy their childhood, to explore more, to know more, to have their critical thinking. But present education system is basically it's bringing out preschool things like a KG, kindergarten. It's not only, I feel that it's not only making them pushed into the competition world, but also making them a sort of a materialized person. I have been a part of an education system, quite a number of schools, which is, well, to put forth based bluntly, I can say that every children who is in the nursery, like a 3 years old, 4 years old, they come to a certain class which is not their classroom, even though it's a play school. Yet they come to class and the only thing they feel that they are some sort of a freedom. I have been giving them karate classes, so I see them how they react in classroom and how they react in their karate class, which is very free. So isn't it necessary for the children to, that's the first thing is that, isn't it necessary for the children to know what they are in childhood itself? Second question is that why are they pushed into the competition mode, even though it's not the motto of it, but yet a lot of institution does it. My third point is that let the competition of school marks invisible. Like, let the grade system be like pass or fail rather than 70, 60. Even in the schools, there are competition in the classroom. So instead of that, isn't it better to have a pass or fail system in school system, or and remove all the grading system in the preschool? Or and also my suggestion or my point is that the concept of pre-KG, which starts from 3 years, they just started walking. You are expecting a child who just woke up from sleep and they know how to walk and don't know basic speaking, and they're pushed into schools where they have to face strangers. It's too young age for facing a strangers. It's a 3 years old kid. It's not only affecting their psychological development, also it will affect their further futures. So that's my point.
Well, I mean, your points are well taken, but let us also understand in the changing society, people are growing up at an early age. For example, even at the age of 8 or 9, girl children are becoming major in biological sense of the term. So likewise, a 2-year-old today in many houses, and I'm sure this is not something a part of your experience as well, you will see that the 2-year-old easily handles a mobile phone. He knows which button is to be pressed to watch a particular video. This is happening. Now, whether we should hand it over to him or her or not is a big question, but these days the changing lifestyle has made this such a compulsive kind of a thing. Isi nahi kar li duniya mutti mein. That is the sad part of the whole thing. So, that your point is well taken, whether we should expose them to this, but then situation is such that they are already exposed, which is why the good thing about new education policy, national education policy, is that it has integrated primary education with pre-primary education. Earlier there was some distinction. Now it is 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4 kind of a thing. So that 5 is a holistic approach, and therefore before the age of 6, he is not going into any kind of a formal education. Post that, the class, formal in the sense primary education, it is only after 6th, acquiring the age of 6. And there are ample number of researches that are available which tell us that at the age of, when a child is, below the age of 6, he is more capable of learning many languages. That is also, there is an evidence to suggest that, which is why in many states, I'm sure here in Karnataka also that might be the case, people have started English medium right from first standard.
It's not about educating them, but their childhood.
No, I agree. But then education system alone cannot control their childhood. There are several social factors within the family and even out of it which are governing their childhood. Government alone cannot be blamed, and government alone cannot even be controlling it. Now there are many families which are single parent families. They have different sets of challenges before them. Today we are in nuclear family era. Again, that is a different, how can you compel people to stay in a joint family? Although there are benefits of it, but then there are limitations as well. And government cannot enter into every other sphere and issue dictates to behave in a particular manner. That is not the job of the government. It is for the society to consider.
If I can just add, for the first time in the educational policy consideration, early childhood education has been brought into the ambit. Otherwise, so far all our regulations, anything can be regulated only if it is there within the ambit of governance. Earlier governance was only considering from first standard, that is beyond age of 6. But now the approach that has been brought by the new education policy, it starts from the age of 3. First 5 years is called foundational stage, where the primary, pre-primary and pre-KG education is also considered. Unless it's brought under the governance ambit, there's no way one can regulate. So there's definitely a possibility of bringing in those considerations, and also NEP mentions that the entire process should be aligned with the neurocognitive development of the child. So taking into those considerations itself, the education has to be provided. I think this policy has taken the first right step in that direction to bring these areas also into light. Thank you very much. I think with this, we would like
Can I have a, may I ask a question?
a quick question.
Yeah,
please.
yeah. It's about NEP, the benefits of all that has been spoken about, sir. You spoke about Skill India, you spoke about a youngster who spoke about 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, everything. How about inculcating values in our youngsters? Knowledge, yes. Skills, yes. Values, where are the values going? It's more of a utilitarian society that we are bringing up. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 that you spoke about.
No, again, I would say that value education, I mean, not for the first time, I mean, even when I used to go to a school, there were some lessons about value education, not that our system has completely overlooked value education, but value education, and I'm not avoiding a direct answer to your question, but I would sincerely urge that everything expecting from a governmental system, I think, is an erroneous approach. We cannot, see, many a times it so happens that when a child, there are many reputed institutions in every city, like Mangaluru, for example, and they have schools right from kindergarten to higher education, even college or maybe university. And once people, I mean, parents try to find some opportunity to take admission, even at the age of 4, 5 for the kindergarten or pre-primary, whatever it is, they believe that putting him or her, their tiny child, in that school, which is a big establishment, is like outsourcing of the parenting, which is an erroneous thinking. Parents cannot shrug off their responsibility. If value education is so very critical, it is for the parents to provide that education to their kids. Schools definitely can play a role, but there are limitations. And therefore, parents will have to, and in the national education policy, there is emphasis given on parent-teacher
Ratio?
parent-teacher interactions and their coordination as well. And I believe that is something very, very critical. Take care of our families, our education system will be automatically taken care of.
And that concludes the session on graduating the education policy. Thank you, Dr. Vinay Sahasrabuddhe, for your powerful perspectives and engaging discussion. And thank you, Dr. Vinayachandra Banavathy, for moderating this session with such depth and thoughtfulness. I would now like to call upon the reputed author, Chana Shankar Rao, to distribute the memento to both of the panel.